Hello and good morning. This is Greenstep's webinar on responsible supply chain. My name is Pirjo and I will be hosting this event. Together with me, we have here Martyna Wojciechowska speaking about sustainability ratings solution for supply chains. And I will start the presentation by introducing the ideas of how does the regulation changes around us affect and impact also the supply chain part of sustainability. You can type down questions for us during our speeches, but we will only answer them towards the end of the session. So please, questions are welcome while we speak. So, if you don't take my word for it, you may listen to one of the biggest investors in the world, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, who is saying that we need to focus on sustainability because it defines the corporate value. It defines your company's valuation, and also all the companies are facing changes. So if you are wondering whether it's for you, yes, it is. Most of our companies will be affected one way or another, so it's time to be prepared. Question is, will you lead or will you be led? And that's something that Larry Fink just last week sent a question to all of the corporations around the world of which he owns shares of. And now let's start to define what is the topic of today. First of all, sustainability right now, what is going on, and then how those changes might affect supply chain. On the left-hand side, we are describing ESG, the current trends. It's been very much in focus to speak about climate impacts of corporate world and climate impacts of all sizes of companies and their supply chains. But it's also true that other planetary boundaries are having an increased focus together with socially just transition. And some of the HR related themes, people themes underneath sustainability are very much increasing in focus. Also are human rights, inclusion and diversity. Well, who is asking for it? In addition to the investors, as mentioned already, it's the employees of the company, customers, consumers, media, NGOs are revealing things from companies' operation that companies would not necessarily always want to publicize. So we better be clean in all parts of our operations. Also, risks are one aspect that banks and investors are looking at. They are thinking about the future value of the company, obviously, and it makes a huge impact whether the company is prepared for the future or not, whether the company is future-proof, so to speak. And specifically on supply chain, what does this mean? First, when we speak about climate impacts, climate change is requesting everybody on this globe for immediate action. And when companies start to kind of clean their own yard, make sure that they have actions in place for their own emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, that's not nearly enough, especially if the company has any products that it produces and sells, provides to the market. It's quite typical that more than 80% of the climate impact actually happens outside of the boundaries of the company, either in the supply chain, in suppliers and raw materials, or then during the use phase of the product. Total average, somebody has estimated, is that 2/3 of the so-called scope 3 impact in greenhouse gas emissions is in the upstream, and 1/3 on the average for all products is downstream. So what will the future demand? More data on environmental and social footprint, clearly speaking. Also better evaluation of the potentially adverse impacts, and of course detailed plans for decarbonization. Those are the primary things that everybody is expecting. You got to know your risks. You have to be prepared. You have to have sustainability factors in incentives and so forth. And now I also promised a brief introduction into what has regulation to do with it. We are now here focusing mainly and only on European scale, new regulations coming from Europe, a package of 3 bits of legislation: taxonomy, SFDR and CSRD. Those are all coming into place this year and next. And although they are not final and fully in action yet, we already know what will be the impacts to all sizes of companies because of it. And now trying to explain it a little bit, why the European Union has decided to build this huge package of legislation for all the companies and financial institutions on this continent. The main reasoning is to make sure there's enough financing for those companies who have a green impact in the future world. So financial sector is incentivized to have information based on which they can make choices of whom to finance and whom not to, of course. And for this, the companies need to disclose more, and financial institutions need to disclose more. And what is perhaps now more relevant to supply chain focus is that financial sector is interested in all the companies' climate emissions, not only what the company does itself, but also what comes from the supply chain. And the major change here regarding corporate sustainability reporting is that it extends also to smaller and non-listed companies, those who have not been asked to disclose any of this information before. So if you are exceeding the limits of a large corporation, whether you are listed or not, yes, you are asked to be more open about your ESG factors. And also if you are a listed company, but even a very small one, you might need to do this. So how to manage sustainability related or environmental, social and governance data then? It's not difficult as such. Any procurement department can handle money and delivery time and even quality in terms of euros and percentages. So why wouldn't we be able to handle also other information, including but not limited to CO2 emissions and due diligence processes regarding legal compliance? So the scope of what procurement purchasing people will have to deal with is going to be extended, but not that much. There's a few new factors, but not like 20 new indicators everybody needs to work on. And of course, it very much depends on the company. We urge companies to think carefully what is material and capture only the data that is actually truly important, relevant and material to the company. And data is only data. Around it you need people. One of the best tricks is of course to involve all the relevant people from organization to be able to create the change, not only measure but actually create some change in the supply chain. And the most important new factor coming from EU regulation is perhaps the fact that it involves more people than before, and it requires more disclosures of new factors, more new ESG factors. And what is what is good about it is that it will harmonize how we speak about ESG. Up until now, companies have been able to choose what measurables they are speaking of and what they think is important, but now they will actually be harmonized and even mandatory KPIs, indicators, due to the regulation. And although it may be a bit surprising for companies who haven't even started with it, Scope 3 emissions is one of those factors. So when you ask about whether taxonomy is what changes everything, not really. Taxonomy describes who is in the game of changing the world towards lower emissions and stopping the climate change, but then, or mitigation of climate change. But it's really the performance metrics and double materiality analysis within all the companies that makes the difference. What are we looking at and who is good in it? So up until the latest years, there was no big rush for complete disclosure of all ESG information because there was no drive for it. Perhaps the companies started reporting about their own doings, but not so much speak everything about supply chain. And the main reason for this was perhaps that nobody was asking. We were not expecting our let's say, anybody who sells us a product to be able to disclose that information. Also, companies might have been a little bit wary of disclosing information that tells too much about their supply chain. It could be competitive and it could be interesting for others in the field. Also, companies may not have welcomed criticism over their choices. That always comes when you speak about who are your partners, who are the suppliers. Perhaps even the information was not collected or the companies didn't trust that it's true and accurate. But now there's more pros than cons. So the return on investment on disclosing ESG information is becoming more and more positive, and there's various factors for it. It's valuation by investors, as said, also avoiding compliance risks, disruptions, reputation damages, and so on and so forth. So, and positively speaking, there's also more and more end users, customers, who are prepared to pay a little bit more for products who are coming from sustainable companies and supply chains. Not maybe double the prices, but a little bit of premium or creamium, as they say. So yeah, and of course innovation is needed to be able to improve environmentally and to reduce the impacts, the harmful impacts of what companies do. And therefore, it's also good that the company is not only innovating alone, but it works with its suppliers to find new alternative materials for what, packaging or whatever. So I would now want to ask you a question. You do not have to answer loud, but think about your current situation, your company. How deep are you there? How deep do you collect the information? Are you only concentrating on internal operations or going all the way to the sources of raw materials? And then by which way are you working with your suppliers, starting from code of conduct towards the full disclosure? Where would you position yourself in this map? And I will then share what science says about it. There has been a study 2 years ago published showing where companies on average are. The majority is still in the lower left corner. So if you find yourself going towards the right top corner, that's positive. And that's positive especially because the EU regulation is going to make you go that way anyway, whether you like it or not. So the majority of companies who may not yet be there are forced to talk to indirect suppliers. They are forced to talk about full disclosure of certain, not all the information, but certain social and environmental adverse impacts. And then, if you have an understanding of what are the numbers that you are interested in and from whom, you need tools to handle that information. Tools are just tools. However, even if there are blockchains and fourth industrial revolution and all that, that doesn't really improve the quality of data unless what's coming in is good. So the tool that you may choose has to be something that works together with everything else that is in your company and operation, and therefore it varies a lot depending on the company's type of operation. What do you do? What are the important factors? Whether there is only office people involved, whether there's some production perhaps, or whether you are large or small. But I just say that there are tools, and even our company offers some. And Martyna will speak about examples later. And finally, even more important than the what do you measure is that whatever you measure, you have an improvement going on in the companies. So you engage the suppliers, work with them, and find ways to improve. Martyna will later on share some examples of what types of data can be collected and what should be measured. But for instance, it's very easy to screen the higher risk suppliers and start from emissions and some human rights issues as an example. That would be all from my side. Greenstep, the company where I work, is an employee of 500 professionals in financial services and sustainability, working all over in Finland, Sweden and Estonia, concentrating on bringing clarity. So, Martyna, are you prepared to start your part of it?
Yes, I am. Welcome, everyone. My name is Martyna, representing the company EcoVadis. I'll just quickly share my screen now so that you can see the slides, and I'll have the pleasure to walk you a bit through, as Pirjo mentioned, some practical example of how EcoVadis supports companies in collecting the data about their suppliers. To begin with, what the main idea of EcoVadis is to support companies to move from the analog and on-site into the digital and remote. That's definitely a system and a way to support digitalization of your company in general. Giving some more background, complementing what Pirjo was sharing, well, Pirjo mentioned the demand comes from investors. We can definitely see more and more investors requesting the sustainability related information. On the right-hand side, top corner, you can see that regulation that Pirjo was also mentioning plays a great role in this environment. Taxonomy, European taxonomy law that we've been hearing about, the EU due diligence, but also Norwegian Transparency Act that is coming in June this year. The piece from the article that you can see in the top right corner comes actually from the Danish market, where it's been said that it's illegal to use the word sustainable without a life cycle assessment. If we can hear this kind of statements coming in, it means that more and more governments, more and more this kind of requirements will be coming. So we as businesses, we need to also be prepared for that. Most of you probably recognize the building on the picture. This is obviously the building from Helsinki, and this is the climate strike. I know we also have participants from Sweden and from some other countries. I believe you all have heard about climate strikes in your countries, in your cities. What does that essentially mean? Your customers, people want climate change. They want action. They want us as business also to move forward and really work on sustainability. Then also FinTech gave some examples. You can read some reports related to how the situation related to business risk look like. So now we look at the left side of the slide. Finnish company, probably very well known for you guys, Wärtsilä, had the case of poor working conditions in their factories in India. You can see in that report that they took actions, that they took the responsibility and really started working on this. Another example is the article. That piece of news actually comes directly from Neste's website. They also had issues related to raw materials suppliers being involved in some serious sustainability violations. And in that report directly from their website, published 2020, they also show how they took actions on making the situation better, moving in the right direction, driving improvements. Of course, we know there are different things that happen in the world. Currently, our role as business representatives is also to take the responsibility for that and to take actions. And now, there is a question from my side. It won't be a poll again. You don't need to answer in chat, but just close your eyes and answer the question to yourself. Does your company, do you have enough competent employees to work strategically towards sustainable business? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the competence to work on your sustainability strategy? There is a Norwegian company called Sustainability Hub Norway, as Hub, as you can see on the logo. They ran this survey, and the study shows that 35% of companies, they do have enough competent employees. How about the rest of the companies? We can think that those are big businesses where they have huge sustainability departments. Companies who really started working on this topic long time ago. How about companies who would like to start now? How about companies where they don't really develop the huge strategy? How about companies who would like to work in a more coherent way with the rest of the businesses on the market? This is exactly where companies like EcoVadis, like Greenstep, can support you and can help you working on sustainability. This is where third party is pretty much needed. The overall idea of EcoVadis is connecting requesting companies on the left-hand side. So you guys, companies who have suppliers, connecting you with your suppliers who we are assessing, suppliers on the right-hand side. So far, as the organization, we have assessed over 85,000 companies globally. So you can imagine that the expertise is really huge. The knowledge that we are collecting about the suppliers is huge. And this is the database that you are also benefiting from if you decide to join the network. Essentially, the EcoVadis solution is the sustainability intelligence suite, within which we have the ratings as the main solution. Those are the proof-based evidence questionnaires that we are sending out to your suppliers, and based on that, running their assessment. I'll tell you more a bit about it in a second. But the blue product is an additional module. This is the IQ system. The IQ system allows you for initial screening of your supplier base. Pirjo was mentioning that the first step you can take is to really identify the low risk, the high risk suppliers. The IQ module, it's something what allows you to do that based on the country risks, based on the category risks, and based on the spend that you have with your suppliers. The yellow module, this is the additional tool as well, and this is the carbon action module, decarbonization tool. This is a solution that helps your suppliers to report on their emissions and helps you to gather the information about your scope 3 emissions. This all together creates a sustainability intelligence suite, as mentioned, giving you a complex solution for sustainability within supply chain. But what I wanted to focus today is the biggest one, so the ratings. The ratings, the final product from the ratings, which you can expect, is the scorecard. This is a kind of scorecard that you get for each and every of your suppliers. Each and every of your suppliers will be assessed in based on the same methodology, but in a bit different way, meaning the questionnaires that we are sending out to your suppliers are tailor-made. Each and every supplier gets a different questionnaire based on 3 factors. So first of all, we will be looking at the size of your organization. Small suppliers, well, up to 20 employees, they just get a few questions. The bigger company is, the more questions we need to ask to be able to assess them. So this is how the questionnaires are structured. Then we look into the country where the company operates. Obviously, there are different country risks. There are different risks in Asia, there are different risks in Europe, but there are also different risks within the countries in Europe, for instance. So we definitely need to adjust the right questions to the risk levels in different countries. And the third and final factor we base the questions on is the industry within which the company operates. Transportation company by road, as an example, or insurance company. I can imagine a lot of you have this kind of suppliers. Transportation company, insurance company, they run completely different businesses. We need to ask them different questions to be able to assess them properly. First of all, we take into consideration the answers we get from companies. Suppliers need to provide us with supportive documentation for each and every answer they give us. So we look into policies, actions, results. This is not a self-assessment activity. Your suppliers will be assessed by our team of analysts. On top of that, we add findings from external sources. We cooperate with different NGOs, trade unions. We do scan news, specialized press. We gather the information we find on sustainability related to your suppliers, and we also add it on top of the assessment. This information is the 360 watch findings, which you can see at the bottom of the scorecard. The scorecard will contain the overall assessment, the overall performance of your supplier. It will contain some benchmark. You can really compare your suppliers to other companies assessed by EcoVadis in general and within your network, but you can also see, and suppliers get a proper feedback. So they see what is great that they already have in place, what are the strengths, what is amazing that they've already started doing, but also there is the corrective action plan, and that's the most important part of the solution provided for your suppliers. So your suppliers can see what they should do in order to drive improvements. This is something what allows you to really bring your supply chain to the next level of sustainability. Of course, this kind of scorecards, this is what you can see as mentioned per supplier. But I believe some more structured data, some general data about your suppliers is also what you would love to see and compare. So this is why in the system you also have access to different reportings. There is performance reporting, there is improvement reporting and coverage reporting. Those reports show you the general information about your supply chain, and they help you to track different KPIs that you decide to have activated. This reporting can help you to, for instance, run your sustainability reporting as well and track the success of your sustainable procurement program. That's in a nutshell the EcoVadis solution and what you can expect from this. I understand that the pressure that comes from the regulations and from the European Union is really interesting and important for us. What is great, of course, I've heard it a lot of times from different companies that, okay, we know we should focus on it, but there's still not such demand from government, for instance. Well, here in this report that Pirjo was also mentioning in one of her slides, you can read a bit more about the EU policy recommendations for supply chains. So you can get some more knowledge about what's required from you as business leaders and what steps you can take to really start acting within this area. That would be actually the end of my part related to the EcoVadis solution. Here you can see my contact details. I know my surname is pretty long, so feel free to screenshot it. That should be a bit easier. And please remember that the session is open to the questions. That's the time for you to ask any questions you might have. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A section. We will be happy with Pirjo to take them and to answer them. I know we've already gotten some questions. Is there anything what you would like to begin with, Pirjo?
Martyna, while you are speaking, you could answer from one very central question coming from one of the participants asking how does EcoVadis secure the governance and transparency to ensure the truthness of the feedback from suppliers? So how do we know that it's valid what they respond?
Amazing. This is an excellent question, and thank you very much for this. Well, we speak about how important it is that we get the right information from your suppliers, and I should definitely tell you some more about how we make sure that this is the true information we get from your suppliers. First of all, this is why the EcoVadis business model is as it is. So this is why it is based on the proof evidence. We will be gathering the documentation from your suppliers. The EcoVadis solution is not based on self-assessment. We do not ask a question, do you have a waste management system? They answer, yes, we do, and we're happy with this. No, we need the proof, the policy, the action, the result related to how your suppliers deal with this. Obviously, you can wonder whether the certification that your suppliers are sending us is real. And that's correct. This is also something what our suppliers will be looking into. We will be checking whether the documentation, whether the certification we're getting from your suppliers is a real documentation. We will be validating this. The other thing we do to really ensure that what we get from suppliers is right and the way we assess your suppliers is right is having 3 analysts going through one questionnaire. So as mentioned, the solution is not really automated. It's a human capital involved. There are always people assessing your suppliers. So there are 3 different analysts going through questionnaire one by one, opening the documentation and really assessing your supplier. So those are the steps that we are taking to ensure that what your suppliers claim is right. Of course, we as a company, we're also ISO certified. We do work on data security. So it's all ensuring that we assess your suppliers as good as possible.
Yes, very good. So I'll take a couple of the other questions now, and then we'll come back to EcoVadis specific questions in a moment, while Martyna has a moment to look at them first. There was a question regarding Scope 3 reporting, whether it will be mandatory and to whom, and whether it will still be materiality analysis basis. Yes, of course. For all of the European new regulation, materiality analysis is very central to it, double materiality. So definitely if emissions are not within the materialities of what you do or your customers do or anything what happens in the value chain, then it is possible that you will concentrate on something else. So that's still valid. But still, however, even if this is the case from the company's perspective, it is also true that investors need to report the same things. So they will be asking the questions whether or not it is material. Yeah, more requests regarding emission information will be there. I hope that answers that question from an anonymous person. And then there was the first question coming from services company. If you are in professional services or other services, not products, how can you improve in sustainability? Well, the trick is really to look at the whole value chain, not only what the company does internally, but what happens in with your customers and what you do, and whether there are any areas of sustainability where you can significantly provide a positive impact to that as a part of what you do for business. So that's something to start with, definitely. And to improve on sustainability, it is a wide topic and there are plenty of indicators. I would probably start from where you are not excellent yet, so that you can see an improvement. So that's one practical tip towards that direction. Martyna, did you have time to look at the new questions then?
Yes, I did. And I also see one that came here previously that I would love to take as well. There was a question related to how can we compare our company with competitors working in the same industry? Can brands compare themselves with each other? That is an excellent question as well. And of course, it's really important to compete, but by competing, you also motivate yourself. This is a very tricky question, and this is a difficult topic. We as EcoVadis, we try to support companies as much as possible in cooperation. So this is why we've already created different initiatives. We do, for instance, have initiative for cosmetics companies. We do have initiative for chemicals related companies. We do have initiative for pharmaceutical companies or electronics related companies, telecommunications. So within those initiatives, companies actually can see each other's suppliers as well. So you will be able to kind of compare how your suppliers perform. You will be able to open up for a dialogue, have a closer connection, and really work together on sustainability. We can imagine that you are guys also sharing different some suppliers, what means that if company A from chemicals industry and company B from chemicals industry have the same supplier, and you together put pressure on the supplier to work on sustainability, this supplier will of course get engaged more into this activity. So that's for sure something what might be of a huge benefit for you, working together, being also able to kind of in a bit compare yourself with each other. The other thing related to comparing companies is something which you can do on the platform. Maybe that's not necessarily related to comparing your own company with your competitors. Of course, on the platform, you can request access to the scorecard of your competitor, but they need to allow you access to this scorecard. So that would be your competitor's decision whether they want to do it. But on the platform for each and every supplier, you can see how well the supplier performs comparing to all the other suppliers from the same industry that we have assessed as EcoVadis. So this is something what should help you to understand whether your supplier's performance is already good enough, or maybe you need to put some more pressure on the supplier, request some corrective actions from that person. That would be my answer for the comparison. Pirjo, any other question in the meantime that you would like to take, or should I go with the next?
Yeah, well, I'll take one here. Somebody was asking if you have done a materiality analysis, and I'm interested in the double materiality analysis, how to do that exactly. Well, you can also approach us offline regarding that. How does the process go, and how might we be able to support you on that? But yes, It's mainly involving the fact that you have to think about the future as well, not only the past, and the risks involved, and the change, and all that. But better to discuss that separately. And then there was somebody asking for specific details regarding the beginning of the presentation, which we will rather answer offline as well. There's a couple of OEM related questions, Martyna, for you. Can you take some of those now?
Yes, sure. We can look into OEM related questions. I believe that's related to manufacturing for other companies. That's all related to and how we're able to link the suppliers. This is all related to how you would know your suppliers. So on the platform, you have a possibility, and we will need your buyer's support as well in inviting suppliers to the assessment. So we would need your knowledge about who your suppliers are, or who are the suppliers of the manufacturer that you are using. So that means that if you're able to point them, we will be able to assess them. We do not do the research on understanding who's supplying to your company or who's supplying to the manufacturer that you are using as a subcontractor. I hope that gives the answer to that question. If not, we can, of course, discuss more in detail via email or take a call on that. I also saw a question related to the weights on the EcoVadis platform. How does EcoVadis weight the different parts of the questionnaire? This is a great question. I believe the person asking it already has some knowledge about EcoVadis assessment. So a quick introduction here. On one of my slides, you could have seen that in the scorecard, there are 4 parts that the EcoVadis methodology is focused on. And we are assessing your suppliers within environment, human and labor rights, ethics, and sustainable procurement. Those 4 pieces are assessed kind of separately, and then they all build the overall score of your supplier. Each and every of those pieces has a weight on top of it. So that, for instance, for a transportation company by road, we will be having a bigger focus on questions related to human and labor rights, and a smaller focus on questions related to ethics. We will ask those questions, but we will weight them lower. When we speak about financial institution that is your supplier, for sure we will have a bigger focus on the ethical part of the questions. This is how we vary the weights of the questions that we ask to your suppliers. I can't really answer how exactly it's done because that really depends on the industry. It's strongly correlated with this. What I can recommend is to take a look at one of our white papers available on the EcoVadis website. Among the resources there, you can type methodology and you will see the white paper focus on methodology that speaks a bit more about this if you want to have this read. Otherwise, if you get your questionnaire or your suppliers get their questionnaires, they will be able to see which part of the questions is weighted more than the other. So it's really adjusted per supplier.
Yes, good. And finally, there's one more question regarding maximum number of documents for a company who has 8 sites.
Correct. That's the question strictly related to being assessed as a supplier. So I would actually advise to take it with our support team that's working with you guys on your assessment. As mentioned, just giving the listeners some background on what the question is about. As mentioned, when you run through the EcoVadis assessment as a supplier, you need to provide us with the supportive documentation. There is a limit of 55 documents that you can upload on the platform. So the question is related to that limit. I believe that would be best to take it with the support team. However, there is one more question, really important, I believe, related to assessing suppliers. It says, is this fair and equal to all suppliers, no matter what size the supplier is, meaning that small service companies may not have possibility to give such perfect answers as big global suppliers. Full agreement on this. Small suppliers for sure have implemented less actions, and they should have implemented less actions. They will have, well, smaller impact than huge organization. So that's very much clear that we have different expectations towards smaller organization than towards big suppliers. This is why we do ask different questions to small organizations, different question to medium-sized organization, different questions to large organizations. And we will also take that into consideration while assessing the answers we're getting from companies. So for sure, the demand that we put on companies is different depending on the size. We take the maturity into and the expected maturity of the organization into consideration. I hope that it will be helpful.
Very good. Thank you. And the time is almost up, but if somebody still wants to have a new question, there's probably time for one or two. We thank the audience for excellent questions and especially for the interest on the topic which we share, and both of our companies definitely want to do as much good as possible, and we do that by assisting you and other companies obtain good results in sustainability. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you very much also from my side. It was a pleasure to be able to provide you with a bit of the knowledge on sustainability and how EcoVadis supports companies on working with sustainable procurement. We hope to hear back from you soon. If I'm not mistaken, Pirjo, please confirm, Greenstep will be following up with the email, with the recording of the webinar, with the materials, our contact details. So if there's anything else, guys, which you would like us to address, please let me know. I got the confirmation that it's correct. The mail link will be sent out to you.
Yes, everybody who has confirmed their participation, those who are here and those who couldn't make it, will receive a link to the recording afterwards. Well, thank you very much and have a nice day.
Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.